All right. I think I'm live. I'm going to get started officially at 2, but I'm just getting, I want to get ready, get going. And let me see if I can find the link to share. Um, we'll see. So I can find the link for this. Okay, here we are. Okay. All right. We're going to officially get going in a minute. All right, 1 second. I'm going to paste this link here and we'll start at 2 with our episode of Getting Real. I hope you are well and amazing today. This is, it's 2 o'clock. Welcome to Getting Real. I am your host, Monique Hom. And on this show, we talk about authentic, real, and raw stories and topics about real estate investing. And today is June 19th and it's Juneteenth. So I thought, in honor of today, let's talk about race in real estate investing. And, Juneteenth, for those who don't know, was the date that slaves in Galveston, Texas, on June 19th, 1865, learned about their emancipation from Union soldiers, and they learned that they were free. And this is a day of celebration, and for many people, it's a holiday. It's a big deal. I actually did not learn about Juneteenth until maybe 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. So growing up, first off, I am I am an American. I'm a Black American, and I am the child of Haitian immigrants. And my parents are from Haiti, and I actually spent the first 5 years of my life living in the Ivory Coast. So I came in kind of like an immigrant. Though I was born in Boston. I was born in the U.S. I was essentially this immigrant, and I was I was a child of immigrants, and growing up those first 5 years in Ivory Coast in Abidjan, and then going back and forth. We went to Haiti almost every summer growing up. What I saw were places that where almost everyone there was Black, and Blacks were the heads of state. Blacks were, the beggars on the street and everything in between. So I did not grow up really, and neither did my parents, with this conception of there being a difference in society based off of race. That just, if everybody has the same skin color, that was not the differentiator, right? And so when I came to the US, even though I came from 5 and on, and this is a culture with um, definite systemic barriers, I didn't have that lens. And my family never talked about Juneteenth. It wasn't something that really, I don't even know if my parents knew about it. And in school, I never found out about it. We would have Black History Month in February, and I think I learned about Martin Luther King and George Washington Carver and his peanuts and um, Sojourner Truth, but not that many people. And I just had very little knowledge of I knew there was slavery. And in Haiti, Haitians had a slave revolution. It was the largest and only successful slave revolt. They were able to free themselves from their French masters, and it became a free Black republic. So it was a different history that I was born into and that I came into, and so I have this context around race that is both like an insider and an outsider. Being born in here and raised most of my life here, but also having this outside lens and having this vision that was was different. Um, so as we talk about race, and this is such a tricky topic to talk about, um, because it's on the one hand, it is not what I learned was that race is not a limit at all to what you can be, do, or have. I never saw it as a limit because the cultures where I was, there was never a limit to what you could be, do, or have. But in this country, it has been a limit. And this Juneteenth um, is a, a celebration of the ending of one of those limits or the finding out that it was ending. And this day kind of breaks my heart. On the one hand, it's a celebration. It's like, yeah, we're free, but it took 2.5 years, more than 2.5 years between the Emancipation Proclamation. It was signed by Abraham Lincoln in January of 1863. January, and then they didn't find out about it. These particular Blacks until June of 1865. So that breaks my heart, but it is still a sign of progress, and progress has been. There's definite progress here, but there were and have been structural barriers, especially to um, African Americans owning real estate in this country. Obviously, when they were at some point, Blacks were the property. So we go from them being property to being citizens. Then it goes from Blacks then having the 14th Amendment passing and Black men getting the right to vote. And some being given their 40 acres and a mule. And there was Jim Crow, and there was redlining, and there were barriers often to Blacks being able to own land. And these barriers that lasted well into the last century are ones that we're still fighting. It was interesting. My parents purchased a cabin in this area outside of Los Angeles called Big Bear. And when we're looking at the documentation, when that cabin had first been built, there was a covenant that they were not allowed to sell that property to Blacks. So it's property that they bought, and I think it had been built. It's probably that covenant was from the 60s when it was built, and they wouldn't have been able to purchase it. So it's not this history of barriers, systemic barriers is not that old. But we are in a different time, and there is a new opportunity. And in part because of these barriers, it is so important, I think, that people of color, especially women of color, are able and do get land, get property, get real estate. Because for generations, for millennia, real estate is the main way that wealth has been transferred, has been created and transferred um, over time. So today I want to talk a little bit about just how we can take those lessons and use them to move forward powerfully, especially for, you know, I was talking about these limits, limitations about being Black and owning land. And then there you layer on top of that, there were limitations to women owning. So Black men got the right to vote in the 14th Amendment. And in the 1860s, women did not have the right to vote until the 21st Amendment, 1920s, 1921. So it was a long time for women to also get those rights. So we had all of those systemic barriers, and there is to this day this very profound um, gender wealth gap. So wealth is, when I talk about this wealth gap, it is the net worth, what you own minus what you owe, assets minus liabilities. So for every dollar of net worth, wealth that a man has, a woman has, a single man, a single woman only has 32 cents. We often hear talk about the income gap between men and women. So for every dollar that a man makes, a woman makes, I think 82 cents now. The wealth gap, it's $1 to 32 cents. Now, when you factor in race, it gets way worse. So for every dollar of net worth that a single white man has, a single white woman has, I think it's 55 cents. And a single Black or Latina woman has less than 1 penny. Less than 1 penny to the dollar. And one of the best ways, I think, to erase that gap is to have property, is to have real estate. And it is possible for anybody now to get real estate that will help erase that gap, that will create wealth, generational wealth that can be passed down. So I want to support investors of color, especially women investors of color, to get into this. And I'm really proud that many of my goddesses, but the majority are women of color, especially Black women, that are learning and creating wealth through this vehicle. And it's really important that we have supportive communities and there are mentors to show the way, because a lot of us didn't have parents that could show us the way. With this generation, these systemic barriers, like prevented generations of African Americans from getting in the game and then showing their kids and showing their kids and showing their kids. So it's really important to find those communities and to find that support and mentorship. So I want to share 4 main lessons or takeaways that I'm taking away today and that I hope will be valuable for you. So one is really acknowledge and understand the historical context. So a lot of times I find in this country, there is this blame towards people who don't have much, right? As that there's some sense that they are lazy. If they were to work harder, then they would have as much, without recognizing that the playing field has not been level. So it is important to understand that we have not had a level playing field, and to um, to acknowledge that, so we can think about how do we help level that playing field. What can we do? I think there was a I can't there's a recent, and this is in the context of business, and I wish I had the the court where this just happened, but there was a group that was raising, I had a fund to help women of color entrepreneurs. So it was giving money to women of color entrepreneurs who, as seed money, venture capital. These women of color get, I think women in general get only 2% of venture capital, women entrepreneurs. And then when you factor in race, it's like 1% of that or something. It's very small. And, and so there was this fund that was created to give money to women of color entrepreneurs. And I can't remember what court just said that they couldn't do that because it was discriminatory. And so I think understanding the context and having that sensitivity and saying, there's a difference between things that are equal and equitable, right? So treating people that are in different contexts, right? I guess it's discriminatory to give money to these women of color entrepreneurs as opposed to other groups, but it's an attempt to rectify a system where they get less than 1% of 1% of the whole pie. Uh, and so I think it's important to understand that context, and as we think politically, and as we vote, and as we participate in the discussion, that we keep in mind the whole context, and as we move forward. So that's the first one. Lesson 2 about embracing diversity is embrace diversity. All right, we want to value the diverse perspectives and experiences that people of color can bring to the industry. The more I, one of the things that makes me sad is I find that people are less and less likely to listen to voices, opinions that differ from their own these days, and just shut it down. And nope, they're wrong, they're stupid. And I I really hope that we can have more openness and listen to a variety of perspectives. And even when we're talking about race, like not all African Americans think the same. Not all of us have had the same experience. For example, I had a different experience growing up, coming from a different culture. And there are valuable differences to be had when we listen and embrace that. We become stronger. In Haiti, the flag that they had, the new flag after they got freedom, in the center it says l'union fait la force. Like, we're stronger united. And I think that is an important point to think about, right? So embrace that. As we unite together, we are stronger. And that brings us to lesson 3, which is to build inclusive networks. So focus on creating and participating in inclusive networks and communities. And I hope that we can we can create communities that are not just inclusive, but very welcoming. I found that, especially when I was starting in this area, and I was going to um, a lot of different events, networking events, trainings, there were a lot of white men that were in the room. I was very, 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 very unique, both being female and being Black. And as a Black female, I felt like a unicorn. And I have to say, I did not feel unwelcome. And in fact, I found that being different, standing out, not being a Waldo, not blended in with everyone else, helped me. And I was able to use that. So it's not necessarily going to be a detriment to be of color. And if you are of color, don't walk into these rooms expecting that you're going to be treated badly or taken advantage of or ignored, or because that's not what I found. I found quite the opposite. I think it can be a strength. It can be a benefit that you're different, that you're unique, you're memorable. Use that. So, when I'm saying be inclusive, embrace diversity, have an open mind, I'm not just talking to whites to be open minded about blacks. All of us can be open minded and just not show up with preconceived notions about anyone or anything. And I think that's helpful. So let's be inclusive in what we're doing and how we show up with people. So like showing up with a benefit of the doubt, with yeah, giving people grace, giving people grace, and expecting the best from them. And we usually get that when we show up expecting it. And lesson 4 is to educate and advocate. So to the extent you have a platform, and I've tried very hard to use my platform to educate others and advocate for equity in real estate. Like I said, I have a lot of women of color goddesses, which I love. And I also love that it's not just that. I love that we actually have a diverse group and community, and we all learn from each other. So if you have a platform, and whether that is, 100 friends on Facebook or whatever it is you have, strive to educate and advocate and be a voice for those who have not been given the same, who haven't had the same opportunities maybe you've had. So those are my Juneteenth musings. Hopefully that was helpful. It's that's it. Hopefully it was helpful. I hope you got something out of this, and hopefully you'll take it and make a difference. Whether or not that is in you going out there and owning your piece of the world and getting yourself some real estate, um, helping, mentoring, being there for someone else that might have been traditionally discriminated against. And I hope that you can use that, and you'll do that too. So I like to end my shows with a trinity, which is a brag, a gratitude, and a desire. So I brag, and a brag is a celebration. So let's see. I brag, episode 4 of the show. I celebrate that, and that I'm continuing. I'm not quitting, and there's often there's a huge part of me that wants to hide because every episode so far has been very uncomfortable for me to talk about. I cannot say I was comfortable talking about race, um, because I might get attacked for that, and it's okay. But so I brag being brave, and I brag showing up, even when it's uncomfortable, and yeah, so that's my brag. And I'm grateful for everyone who's listened. And if you have comments, please comment and share. And if you have questions, I'm going to be doing a Q&A episode soon. So please your questions, but I'm grateful that you are here. I'm really grateful. And I desire to end the gender wealth gap. I desire to end the race wealth gap, or to do my part. I really desire that to end. Desire us to have par. That's what I desire. So Um, I hope you can help in that. So thank you for joining, and thanks for being here this Juneteenth. Please share this with someone who you think would find value in this show, and also, thank you for getting real with me today. Let's continue to build a more inclusive and equitable world together. So until next time, stay true and keep striving for excellence. Bye.